So Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 just came out about 2 days ago, and I've finished playing the main story, and I've finished a good chunk of the side missions, so it's finally time for us to talk about it. This is easily one of my most anticipated games of the year, if not my most anticipated game of the year, and luckily, it holds up to every expectation that I had for it. There were a lot of things that I was nervous about going into this game, considering the first two that they made, and I just was not sure how they were going to handle a lot of the things that they ended up handling really well. I think if you're on the fence about getting this game, which I don't know why you would be after the first two, you definitely need to experience this, especially because of how it sets up the future of what Insomniac wants to do. So before I continue, I want to say here is your spoiler warning. I'm going to be talking about story beats that have to do with the entire game, and I just want to warn you in case you haven't gotten the chance to play it yet. Okay, well, from start to finish, this game is awesome. The beginning of this game easily beats the first one. The first 30 minutes, that first main story mission, is just done super well. There wasn't a single thing that I disliked about the first mission. It was a great way to introduce the web wings. It was a great way to show us how Sandman is in the Insomniac verse, as well as the growth that Peter and Miles have gone through since the first two games. And overall, that is what the game does best. The relationship between Peter and Miles, but also between Miles and his community and Peter and his group of friends, is just done perfectly. Insomniac Games just nails the Spider-Man feel. They nail the openers for all of their games, and they nail the feeling of a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. This is easily one of the best adaptations of not just Peter and Miles, but Venom and Kraven and Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn, and really just all of the characters in this game are almost at their peak. I say almost because there are things I'll go over in the negative portion of this video that I kind of don't like. But again, that's all just personal. I think this game is easily better than the first two. Story-wise, it's better. Gameplay-wise, it's better. And I can admit, even though there are things I don't like about the game, there are things that most people are going to love about them. One of my worries going into this game was how it was going to approach making Peter and Miles not only feel different from a story aspect, but from a gameplay one. And my worries were squashed almost immediately. Peter and Miles definitely feel like two different Spider-Men, even though they're on the same team. It establishes very early on how this game is going to treat Miles in terms of being the more community-driven Spider-Man out of the two, and how it's going to treat Peter with having the bigger overarching story of the game, which in my opinion makes perfect sense, because even with the other two games, Miles's game felt more like a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It felt more in tune with the community, while the main Spider-Man, he's been doing it for a long time. He's already had his tenure as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and now he's on to protecting the whole city, while Insomniac's Avengers are off who knows where. Peter's story is very focused on not only his love for MJ and Harry, but his love for being Spider-Man, as well as his fear of not being good enough as a hero after the events of the first game. I think that they did the addiction aspect of the symbiote perfectly. I think it shows in both Peter and Harry throughout the game that after Harry loses the symbiote to Peter, his addictiveness to the suit, as well as his fear of dying, is coming back very strong. And then obviously we see as the game progresses, Peter becomes way more aggressive. His personality changes, his wardrobe changes. He has a huge nighttime blackout at one point of the game that's also done really well. I think Yuri Lowenthal deserves every single award that an actor can get for a video game this year, because he just kills it. The entire game, he's on his A game. His chemistry with MJ's actress, Miles's actor, and Harry's actor are all perfectly, and even the small glimpses we get of Tony Todd and him going back and forth, and him quipping at Venom's monstrous and then Venom's just pure evilness, is just done perfectly. I really hope that the Tony Todd rumor that he's been kind of teasing alongside Yuri and Miles's actor is true. I hope we get a Venom spin-off game, because I need more Tony Todd as Venom. He's just perfect as him. Peter is easily at the darkest point he's been, not only in the past two games, but really I feel like this is one of the darkest Peter Parker adaptations that we've gotten, just because of Yuri Lowenthal's performance as the character. You can feel for him, you can understand his fear, especially after Aunt May's death at the end of the first game, and his fear of not being able to save Harry in this one. I was kind of scared that we would get a lot like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 sick Harry treatment in this game, but I was very fortunate to discover that it was actually done perfectly. Like, it just makes sense for him to be sick, it makes sense for him to be dying, because this Peter would obviously be afraid of not being able to save another loved one. But to me personally, I feel like Miles' story in this game was just perfect. I think that although it started off very weak and not something I was a fan of, because it just felt like he was really on the back burner, which makes sense because you want to play as the symbiote, you want Venom to come, and every time it switches back to Miles after main Peter mission, it's very much him whining about his college essay. But at the same time, he's also perfectly in tune with his community in this game. His sense of balance that he's trying to find for himself is perfectly tied to not only demising his personal life when he is Spider-Man, but he puts his community before himself and before anything else. And that's why he really feels like the best version of the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man out of the 3 games. But there was an also big struggle with him. I feel like after you fight Martin Lee in the Craven mansion is when Miles as part of the game really picks up, because he has to fight Peter and you have to beat him as Miles, and Miles is just so strong. Miles is easily the better of the two. And I think the game shows it. Like, he single-handedly defeats symbiote Peter. He is going toe-to-toe with Venom after only being Spider-Man for 2 years, and he is better for wear. Like, Peter's literally in the anti-Venom suit, and Miles is doing a better job fighting Venom than Peter is. So I think it's pretty obvious what they were trying to do here. But I like that this game was very much the transitional period of slowly making Miles the more main Spider-Man, which I think in the 3rd game is going to happen. I think by the end of the 3rd game, either Peter's going to fully retire or he's going to fully die, which is what they teased a lot in this game, that Peter was going to die. And then especially after the end credits scene with Norman and Otto, I think that Spider-Man 3 is going to be the end of Peter Parker for sure. I actually think that this story feels more grounded as well. It doesn't feel as out of the ordinary like the first game did. The first game was very jam-packed, and one of my grievances with it was that I just felt like there was too much going on, while in this game it feels like it's very grounded. There's not too many things to do in terms of side content, but all the side content is done perfectly. I can understand when people wanted to do more in this game, but I personally felt like there was a perfect amount of doing things and not really that side of the argument. I don't think the game is too short. I think it's actually a perfect length. I think Miles being the reason that Peter is able to break free of the symbiote is really telling too for how Insomniac sees Miles, as he's the pillar of the Spider-Man team. He's going to be the main Spider-Man, and that's just what I'm throwing out there. I don't think there's any way that Peter really survives the 3rd game, or at least his version of Spider-Man. And I think that really him overcoming the symbiote because of Miles shows that Miles is the true hero of the game, because without Miles, Peter would have lost himself to the symbiote 100%. Craven is perfect in this game. His entire wanting to be in New York was to fight something that would kill him. And I love it. I think that's exactly how you adapt Craven. That's exactly how you make his wants and his desires. And his death scene was perfect. I think him dying to Venom is just beautiful. And I think the way it was shot, I think the rain, I think the lighting, I think his score, everything about Craven was perfect to me. And he was in the game for a perfect amount of length too. After he died, I was kind of scared that the game was going to really just go fast paced to the ending, but it felt like 3/4 of the way there. I think the emotional impacts of this game are done perfectly too. It actually, I felt when the game was trying to trick us into thinking Harry was going to die before Miles, again, saves the day, but zaps Harry back to life. I really was afraid for Peter and how his life would turn if Harry did die in this scene. I'm trying to get all my super positives out of the way here. I think that really the strengths of this game, the story, the score, the way it looks, the combat, pretty much everything is perfect in this game. And it's definitely on the Mount Rushmore of superhero video games for me, and definitely in my top 5 favorite superhero games of all time. There are just small things that I kind of nitpick at, and really they're personal grievances, so you might not feel that way, and that's perfectly fine. This could be your favorite game of all time, and I would totally understand that. Firstly, one of the things I really didn't like about this game was the suit choices for Peter, for me, felt very boring in compared to Miles. I thought Miles had a lot of really great suits. I love his 10th anniversary suit. It was my most wanted suit in the game, and it was in the game, so I was happy. I like that Peter gets the classic black suit. I don't like that it's unlocked at level 50. Like that's just, I feel like that's not really fair, and that's a really far hike. Without doing most of the side content, I finished the main story around level 30. So I felt like and even then I felt like it was really easy. So I feel like they should have made the black suit an earlier unlock instead of level 50. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. But I played the game on the one that's right below the hardest difficulty, and it was still very easy. I still only died probably 2 or 3 times in the whole game. A lot of the side content is actually somewhat more difficult than the main story. So that's kind of where I stand with it. I don't know, maybe someone who plays the game on amazing has a difficult time. I'm not sure. I really didn't like too that there were a lot of duplicates for not just Peter, but also Miles from the last game. I didn't need the homecoming suit for Peter to be unlocked before the final swing suit from No Way Home. I didn't need that. I don't really need the Into the Spider-Verse suit if you're gonna give me the Across the Spider-Verse suit. I think the ones that came back and had like a change, like the Noir suit, was done perfectly, and that's a good example of bringing a suit back from the first game. But giving us the classic Ben Reilly hoodie suit, as well as I think it's like the Ben Reilly 3 suit where he just has the hood on the entire time for Peter's suit, I didn't need that suit in the game. And I know most people really wanted the Sam Raimi classic suit to come back, as well as the Amazing Spider-Man 1 suit to come back. But since we got the Amazing 2 suit, as well as the symbiote suit from Spider-Man 3, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, I didn't need those two. It just felt like it was almost filler there to kind of pad the suit number, and I just didn't really like that. And the final little nitpick I have with the game is just there was some quality of life things that I just personally wished were in the game. I don't like that there's not a chapter replay scene. Big spoiler again, you play as Venom in this game, and as one of the biggest Venom fans on the planet, I would love to be able to go back and replay those missions, but I can't unless I start a whole new game save, and I don't want to do that. And even if the new game plus was in there, it would make it a little bit better, because then I could just breeze through the first 80% of the game until that Venom section, because the game is so easy. But that's not in the game either, so there's no new game plus and there's no mission select, which doesn't make sense to me at all. I don't like that companies are starting to add that in as like a later update to pad kind of user retention. I just don't appreciate it. And like for me personally, my biggest gripe with the game, like, and this is going to be very personal. This is very much because of who I am ethnically. As a Puerto Rican American, I didn't appreciate that the Cuban flag was in Miles's house instead of the Puerto Rican flag. I think that the suit that they gave Miles with the Puerto Rican flag on it is perfect. Like, that is perfect. But why did they put did no one proof this? Like, why is this not a proofed thing? And I have a picture of it, and I'm probably going to play the video of it as well. I just don't get that. It's such an easy thing to fix, and they just didn't. I don't know. It didn't even make me upset, to be honest. I actually laughed when I saw it, so maybe that's me. But Miles is my favorite character solely. One of the sole reasons is because my father is an Afro-Latino and Puerto Rican, and that to me was really cool to see a superhero be like my dad. And then even so, my dad loves Miles Morales too. It's his favorite superhero. So this, I don't know, it was just a weird thing. Only a certain group of people are going to relate to this nitpick. Now, before I finish the review, I do want to touch on the post-credit scenes for this game. I think it's cool what they did with Miles's mom and who she is dating. I think that's a big Easter egg for what's to come. The guy that she's dating, his daughter is Cindy, and I'm like 90% sure it's to set up something for the future. I don't know. I'm not too versed with my Spider-Verse lore, so I could be wrong there. But the more important thing was before the ending of the game, before Peter pretty much is taking a break as Spider-Man and Miles is taking over the city, we see Norman tell someone over the phone to get the G serum ready for Harry. So I think that either Harry is going to become the Hobgoblin or the Green Goblin in the next game, which would suck because I want Norman to do it, but I think Norman is going to be the Green Goblin, especially after the Otto scene. Now, this is the biggest setup for the next game, and the sole reason I think Peter Parker is going to not survive the next game is because of Otto saying that he's writing the final chapter. So I think that the third game is going to be the last. I wouldn't be surprised if it's not, but I definitely think that the next game is what they've been building up to, which I can really appreciate. Okay, so that's my pretty much full thoughts on this game. Again, if you've seen any of my other reviews, I don't rate games. I just don't do that. But this is easily probably my second favorite game of the year, if not my favorite game of the year. I think it's better than Sea of Stars so far, and it's better than Starfield, and it's better than Hogwarts, and it's better than pretty much everything that came out this year. Definitely better than that Kong game. So, but yeah, if you haven't had the chance to play Spider-Man 2, please go do it. I don't know why you'd watch this video if you haven't, since I spoiled the entire thing, but I think that you need to. This is a really important game for a lot of reasons, and not just because it's a good Spider-Man game. Anyway, let me know what you thought about the game in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one later.